Thank you so much, Rich. Really appreciate the introduction there. As the name of the panel implies, we're going to talk a little bit about how hiring, getting hired, finding a job is changing today. And Marc is a great person to tell us about this because he's been in the industry for a pretty long time. So with that, Marc, I'd actually love for you to start and tell us a little bit about TheLadders and how you decided to start it, what the thesis behind the company was sort of to begin with.
Sure, would love to, and thanks for inviting me to be here. First off, I love that we're at a tech conference, and it's a Yale conference. It's only at a Yale tech conference that the majority of speakers on stage before noon are women. So cheers to us. That's pretty exciting. And so started TheLadders 12 years ago. I had been SVP at Hot Jobs. Hot Jobs was the #2 job board behind Monster. It had been founded in '98. I joined after it went public, got a lot of exposure to different parts of the business. Yahoo came in and bought us, and they did what Yahoo has done with all their acquisitions over time. They took us from a strong #2 to a distant #5 in the space of about 5 years. And at the time they bought us, there were 3,000 employees, which is relatively small. But that just seemed huge to me, so I didn't want to go work there. And so I took time off and then ended up really wanted to do something else in online recruitment. And was either going to do something for hourly or for like the very high end. And it just struck me that people didn't at that point understand really how to use the internet or how to use it to achieve goals outside of very narrow technical goals. So I had a couple of cousins in town who were, I'm from a big Irish Italian Catholic family. I've got 36 first cousins. So they'd call me and say, hey, Mr. Hot Jobs, how do I find my next job? It's like, it's easy. You just go online, you search, and you see where the jobs are. I don't know how to do that. Can you just do that for me? So I'd search, I'd put them in an email, send them off to them. Hey, great, that's so fantastic. Wow. The next week they call me back, hey, can you do it again? I say, yeah, sure, cuz, I'll do it for you. And went and search, send it off to them. Next week they call back, can you do it again? And then my 6 years of higher education and expensive business school education kick in, and I say, wow, here is an unmet need. And so the idea was we'll take all the great jobs out there. At the time it was only 100K plus. Today it's all professional jobs. Put them in an email newsletter and send it out to people every week. Charge them $25 a month or $99 a year for the service. And so started that in my East Village apartment 12 years ago.
Wow. And so the thesis, it sounds like at the time, was people don't know how to use the internet. Let's compile an easy-to-read newsletter with jobs that fit their needs and criteria. People now are internet savvy, but can you tell us a little bit more about other factors that you've seen change in the world of work? What has changed in the way that people are trying to find jobs from hot jobs all the way until today?
So what hasn't changed is that people still don't know how to market themselves well. For everybody in the room, when you've been through a job search and you had to put together your resume, was there a feeling of joy and glee in your heart, or was there a little bit of anxiety in the pit of your stomach? In general, people find a bit of anxiety. How do I explain myself? There's so much to tell. There's so little space. I can only make the margins so wide. And so I think the central idea is that people still need help marketing themselves, just as businesses need help marketing themselves and small businesses need help marketing themselves. I think as we get more and more sophisticated as professionals and as professionals who have to manage our own careers, that's become more and more important. So the understanding the internet part of it has gotten, people are living on their amazing supercomputers that they carry around in their pockets all day. They're totally living on it, totally get that. But they still don't quite know how to market themselves in a way that is effective.
Yeah, and so part of marketing yourself is picking how you're going to access a particular job, and job boards were the traditional way to do that. You would see a job, you would apply through a job. In my experience at HireArt, we get upward of 500 resumes a week when we post a job to a site like Craigslist. Is that still an effective way to submit an application? Is it effective for the candidate, and honestly, is it effective for the employer to receive applications that way?
So the surprising thing, that when I started at Hot Jobs, we still sometimes had the case where salespeople had to go out to a client, get under their desk and plug the phone jack into a modem so they could log in over AOL dial-up to search the system. 10 years ago, even in 2005, you had said, hey, HR is actually going to go through a technology revolution over the next 10 years and adopt everything that the tech HR industry has to sell it, not just part of it, but just everything, whole hog. They're going to go crazy for it. You simply wouldn't have believed it because HR had resisted for 50 years, mainframe computing and a lot of automation that was routine in other parts of the business. I think it's the latest generation coming into the workforce. It was BYOD, bring your own device, bring your own network. As the millennials came in with their iPhones or came in with their Facebook or Twitter accounts kind of already up and part of how they communicated, it just caused all resistance in HR to crumble. And so the field of how people are thinking about how can technology make us better at hiring today is it can't possibly, it's a different country, different planet to where it was 10 years ago. And so within that, HR departments and hiring managers are way more innovative in terms of what they'll do. It's not just, as Henry Blotcher was saying, at first what people try to do is they just try to take the old media and kind of force it into the new media. And so at first we just try to take job listings from the newspaper and force it into the online frame. Now you see a lot more innovative stuff with how people connect and how people network, and whether it's HireArt or JobVite or a whole host of other things.
Yeah, so I want to agree and I want to disagree with you, actually.
Yep.
So I agree that HR is going through a massive revolution, and I hope it happens. Having said that, when you look at where people are still applying for jobs, the statistics actually haven't changed in about 15 years. About a third of them apply through job boards, about a third of them apply through contingency and other types of recruiters, and about a third of them come in through referrals from other people in the company. Other kinds of tools are still a very tiny fraction of the market. Why do you think that's happening? Is HR actually going through a revolution, or are we just thinking that it is because we're in revolutionary companies?
Sure. So job listings have changed. It's way, way different from where it was 15 years ago. And sometimes what we credit to job listings is if you've posted an opportunity on Stack Exchange where the world's software engineers hang out, yes, it's a job listing, but it's in a very, very particular market, and there's a very, very particular type of follow-up that goes on there. If that's still a job listing, then yes, you're correct. But it's so different from what it was in the newspaper. And in terms of the kind of that rough breakdown between a third, let's call it a third is like random advertising.
Yeah.
We call it post and pray. Right?
Yeah.
People post their job out there. They hope whatever's going to happen. A third is from people that your employees already know, and a third is from paid agents of your company to go out there and get stuff. As I've read back in the history, that's 200 years ago.
Right.
That was also how companies were finding employees in that mix. I don't think that fundamental human behavior is going to change, but what's enabling it, whether it's hey, I found this guy on Twitter who's tweeting a lot about database marketing. Why don't we bring him in? Or hey, we need somebody who has a certain zest to represent our brand. We found him on Instagram.
Right.
Or hey, we need somebody, a very, very specialized area. We found like the one person in North Dakota who does this on LinkedIn. Those are totally new ways to do what is the classic human behaviors.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting that you mention it, because in some ways I think the internet has given us a chance to exacerbate our worst behaviors. So for instance, Craigslist has been around for a long time, but recently I heard about a startup that allows you to auto-submit to every single job on Craigslist without having to do anything else. So here you are, you can just spam everybody that you can, and in some ways I think that's something that other tools are trying to stop. And one thing you mentioned that I think is quite interesting is the idea of different skills that are coming up. So Instagram allows you to see somebody's graphic design skills or somebody's photography skills. On LinkedIn, you can find somebody very niche. Tell us a little bit about how the skills have changed from 2003 when you were starting TheLadders all the way through now. What are employers looking for in candidates today that they perhaps weren't at the time?
Overall, the wave of millennials coming into the workplace has been a big impact on industry. If you work with millennials, nod your head. Right? You've experienced this, And it's been an adjustment period for everybody. When millennials first kind of showed up at TheLadders 10 years ago, it was all the classic stuff. Boy, they seem really entitled, and they want to get promoted right away, and they want raises all the time, and yeah, they want feedback, but they want positive, warm, nurturing feedback. It's preferably.
Why aren't you giving me any good feedback yet? Am I doing a good job right now?
You look wonderful,
Thank
and
you so
the
much.
questions have already been fantastic.
Awesome.
And so this is.
I needed that halfway through.
Right, there you go. And so we were kind of Gen Xers and Boomers at that point. We fought it. Look, you come in, it's an entry-level program. It's 2 years till you get promoted. Put your nose down and go do it. And we probably browbeat the new recruits into submission. But there were new recruits every 6 months. And so finally we were like, well, look, this is just not going to change. And so we decided to change our program. So we broke up the 2-year promotion into 6 promotions over 2 years. Instead of coming in as associate and getting promoted to senior associate, you started off as a junior analyst, then 4 months later as analyst, then 4 months later as senior analyst, then junior associate, senior associate. The pay rate at the end was the same, and so we're all laughing. But the fantastic thing is that it worked for everybody, right? It really worked for everybody. We got. At the end of 2 years, we had people kind of at the point that they were supposed to be and at the pay rate they were supposed to be. And for the millennials, it was, hey, I got the feedback I wanted. I got to call mom and dad, like, Mom, Dad, cheers, I got a beer. I got a promotion at work today. And, thinking about that, there's some interesting, stepping aside from the generational stuff, there's some interesting business insight there, which is, look, the psychological research is pretty clear that positive feedback more often works than not. The negative feedback in certain cases can be helpful, but mostly it's positive feedback, rewarding people for the behaviors that you're looking for is the way to get the behaviors that you want out of them. So this generation wants more positive feedback. Hey, that's terrific. Hey, they're very achievement-oriented, and they're looking for, what do I have to do quickly to get through this hoop? Well, hey, that's kind of a smart business goal, isn't it? And they want the feedback loop to be much smaller than traditionally, which if any of you are engineers or any of you work in any type of physical manufacturing, you know that the quicker your feedback loop is, the faster you can actually improve things and get your production process better. So overall, I kind of came around for the position from originally, what a bunch of entitled people coming into my company, to realizing that at the end of it, we were actually far better off with the new system than we were with the old system. And so I think the biggest changes have been this attitude brought to modern business. Are probably the biggest changes that I've seen in the decade.
Yeah.
Been this. I mean, you're of the generation. What's your view?
Well, one thesis I have is that the skills that are required for work have changed drastically over the last couple of years. The expectation that I have for anyone who joins HireArt now is a very high level of intellect around internet usage. And so just being able to use the internet in a normal way is not enough. Understanding how code works, how HTML works, having basic understanding of things like SQL. Almost for any job, even our customer service person now has to be able to run very basic queries in order to help people. That's changed a lot. And so one thing I think about is, are colleges preparing people well enough for these kinds of jobs at technology companies? And beyond just engineering, which is an often talked about topic, we all know there's not enough computer scientists, but do you think that universities are giving people the right set of skills, whether it's behavioral or actual skills?
Well, that's really a trade-off that we face, particularly coming out of Yale, the Yale liberal education.
Right.
And there weren't courses in accounting on purpose. There weren't courses in marketing on purpose. There weren't a lot of these courses in business on purpose. So my senior year, I literally decided what I was going to do because I read in the New York Times business section that international trade might be big in the next decade, right? And that's okay. I'm going to go into that. And there are minuses to that system, and there are pluses to that system. How vocational do we want our college education to be overall in our society? But then particularly, within Yale, how vocational do we want to get? And I think the answer is probably not too vocational. It's far better to have kind of the insight from having read literature and read deeply in history to understand kind of the influences behind people's behavior and why they think what they think and when they do what they do, rather than MySQL yesterday or PostgreSQL today or NoSQL tomorrow, because those will all fade away. It's interesting, though, you say that almost every job today is technology enabled. One of the things, so I write what we're pretty sure is America's largest career advice newsletter. Goes out to 8 million people every Monday morning at TheLadders. We think it's the largest in the world. There might be some place in China or Brazil that's larger. And one of probably the most intractable problem that comes up is age discrimination. And I didn't really know when I got into the field 15 years ago that age discrimination was such a serious thing, but it is. And the age at which the discrimination starts, keeps dropping. So now, like in certain tech industries, if late 30s, early 40s is time for your colleagues to. It's a fact that your colleagues are going to start wondering about you. And I think in business in general, you see that even in old line industries, by 50, 52, people have unfair questions about your capabilities.
Do you think this is a particular phenomenon that's happening in Silicon Valley or in Silicon Alley with companies started by people in their 20s, or is it a phenomenon that is happening across the board?
It's a phenomenon that's a result from the breakdown of lifetime employment. So until 1993, IBM, if you get a job at IBM, you're there for life.
Right.
February of 1993, IBM says for the first time we're going to have layoffs. And that just kind of started for the whole country. And so now, instead of one company managing your career and moving you through a whole bunch of different postings, you are supposed to manage your career and run yourself through a whole bunch of different postings. And I think the most, so what I've come, ultimately what I've come to on that is that age discrimination isn't so much age discrimination as it is mindset discrimination.
Right.
Or
perceived mindset discrimination,
right.
I would say.
Right. Well, I've met 60-year-olds who are enthusiastic about new technology and what's going on Instagram, but not like in a weird, I'm trying to be a teenager way, but just like interested in it
right.
and engaged with it, that don't have a problem at all. And I've met 30-somethings who are very set in their ways and don't want to learn the new thing. And Microsoft Excel is good enough for my dad, so why isn't it good enough for you? And I think more and more this mindset of I didn't just learn one thing in college and now I'm going to apply for the next 40 years, but every year there's going to be some new thing and I've got to adapt as I go along. Whether you're just out of school and starting at HireArt or whether you're several decades into your career, that mindset is the most important thing.
Right. So it's interesting. One theme you're bringing up here is what colleges should teach you is to learn how to learn. Because it seems like every 2 years the skills we require from a technical standpoint are going to change. So being able to adapt your skill set seems important.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I've noticed, though, is that the jobs that are being created by technology companies happen sort of on two extremes. Either you're going to be a very creative person, you're going to come up with new ideas, new marketing campaigns that are changing everything, or you're going to be working for Instacart as a delivery person, or for 1-1 delivering things, or for eBay couriers, or HireArt hires a lot of people for Google as self-driving car testers. One of the most popular jobs on our site. Hundreds of recent
self-driving car tester.
Yeah, people who are testing
that
self-driving
seems
cars.
like a bit of a.
They all graduated from like Santa Clara University or Berkeley or somewhere like that, and this is their first.
It sounds like an easy job.
It's actually probably not that easy because you have to pay so much attention to what's going on.
Okay, good. Right? I guess that's right. As long as the car's...
But it's not a very intellectually rigorous job. Neither is being a delivery person for eBay Now or Google Shopping or hundreds of these jobs that are being created. So do you think that the tech world is creating interesting jobs for people, or is it automating? And on the other hand, the thing we haven't talked about, the obvious big elephant in the room around technology is are jobs being automated away that previously were actually good professions for people to have. When I go to the bank today, I don't ask the bank teller for help. I just use the ATM. When I get to the airport, I don't need anybody to help me check in. I just check myself in if I already didn't do that on my cell phone. So how are people getting jobs given this bifurcation of career opportunities?
Right. Yeah. Look, the guy who invented the wheel probably got ragged on for putting the people who used to carry stuff out of work. Right. So every time we have new technology. People bring this up and say, hey, you're going to throw the people that we're doing the thing that's being automated out of work. It's a conventional wisdom viewpoint. Anytime you actually look at the data across society and across most people, it's a benefit. And then but there are inevitably cases where somebody's been in a field 20, 25, 30 years, it gets automated away, and then they're really stuck, and their life outcome is dramatically reduced. But in aggregate, new technology and better productivity in anything is best for all of us. So whether it's information being processed more quickly, or cars being put together more quickly by robots, or ditches being dug faster, whatever it is, technology is a positive enabler and an unbelievably positive force in our world.
And I see your point. I mean, there are probably discussions like this happening during the Industrial Revolution where people are saying, hey, we're all getting fired from our jobs because they're being taken over by machines. And that's a fair point. But it seems like this revolution is happening so quickly, and so many jobs are being destroyed that a bunch of people are getting left behind. And the question is, can those folks learn the new skills that are required to participate in the new economy? One of my favorite stories is, so HireArt, what we do is we allow people to showcase their skills in order to get a job. And one of our clients was a company in the Bay Area that was hiring an Excel and SQL analyst. And a person, and they could be anywhere, the person could be anywhere. And a person from Detroit who had been working at Barnes & Noble or some bookstore applied for the job and said, hey, I've been teaching myself how to use Excel using online free courses for the last 2 years. And she was actually one of the finalists. She didn't get hired, but she was one of the finalists. And it was this awe-inspiring story for me of somebody who was able to transform their skill set. But is that a common story, and is that an expectation that we should have for the Barnes & Noble cashier to become competitive against people in the Bay Area on a SQL job?
So the truth of the matter is today that the education system, particularly for our most disadvantaged citizens, is horrible at preparing them for the future. It's not just a pity, but it's a shame. And there's so much that should be done to fix it. Progress isn't going to stop while we wait for that to be fixed, even if you wanted to.
Right.
If you wanted to say, let's keep all the ATM, forget the ATMs, let's keep the tellers, let's keep the cashiers, let's keep them higher paying jobs. You can wish for that, just consumers are going to go and do the thing that's more efficient.
And frankly, I don't wish for that, because I think that if we can replace those jobs with jobs that require people to express their creativity, their intellect, et cetera, that's much better for everyone involved. But it's, I think, a hard transition. Now, we only have a couple minutes left, and one topic I want to talk to you a little bit about is career advice for folks in the audience, recent Yale graduates or people who've been out of school a couple of years. Tell me a little bit about sort of the career arcs that you see Yale graduates have, and what advice you might have about mistakes people make either in picking jobs or in kind of formulating their stories around their careers.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's qualified to give anybody else career advice, but I can tell you what I've observed. Probably the most common error that I see in people coming to me for career advice, kind of in aggregate, across millions of people, is that they just don't do what they think is going to make them happy. And there are all sorts of reasons why they come up for it, with why doing this other thing is what they ought to do. One of my newsletters that ended up getting some traction. It was titled "The Boy Who Followed Someone Else's Dream," and I had a friend of a friend come in and interview for a finance director job at TheLadders, and won't use her name, but I'll just say D. And so D said to me, well, look, I really want this job as finance director of TheLadders. Kind of explained it to me, and after 10 minutes, like D, I don't buy it. I don't believe you. You're qualified. You used to work at Harvard Business School. You're at J.P. Morgan Chase. All this, terrific background. I don't buy that you actually want this job, or that you're actually even interested in finance, because you just don't strike me as somebody who's telling me the truth and being authentic when you're telling me about finance. So look, you got after you put the two kids to bed at night and you're at home and you're just by yourself and you kind of have a moment. What is it that you kind of dream about? All right, her eyes light up. She sits forward and she says, "Food." I love food. I love food blogging. I'm like, what's your food blog? She's like this. I look up and she's got all this amazing food blog stuff out there. I'm terrific. I'm so excited about it. I said, well, why don't you go do that? It seems like you like it. Why don't you go do that? It's like, well, my parents and classmates from HBS don't think it's very prestigious. And I was like, well, when have great successes ever occurred by following what other people's advice was?
Right.
Like, there's no book titled "The Boy Who Followed Someone Else's Dream," right? That's not the book that you read to your kids at night. And I did the follow-up newsletter. So she didn't go back to the banking or finance path. She took a job at a famous fast service food place here in New York for a couple years, and now she's a senior person at a famous home delivery, Fresh Direct, I'll just say it. Right? And she's terrific, and she's doing food and she loves it and whatever. I can't tell you how many times that's if there's what's the core problem in somebody's job search, that they know in their heart of hearts what's going to make them happy, and they have come up with some reason why that's what they're not going to do. I had another guy who's out in the Midwest who he wanted to be head of a division in a $2 to $10 billion food distribution company. And somehow he got into his head that what was cool was these smaller, faster growing things. And so each week when I got on the phone with him, he would tell me, well, tell me about your pipeline, what are you interviewing for? And it was all 2 to 500 million, smaller food distribution businesses. And I'd be like, well, you told me that what you really want to do is be in this larger company because you got more infrastructure and you can do more interesting things, and that's what really fascinates you. Why is everything in your pipeline these smaller companies? Well, that's what everybody's talking about these days, and that's what's cool. And honestly, 2 months of my working with him was breaking him out of doing what somebody else's dream was, and just being honest with himself about this is what I like. One of the tough things, particularly for bright folks to realize, is that your life up until the point you graduate Yale has been about opening doors. My last semester at Yale, I took a course, an intro course to architecture. I had no business taking an intro course to architecture, but it's been fantastic the last 20 years. I have a barely formed opinion on architecture, but that I enjoy as I go around and
If we had more
travel.
time, I'd love to drill into that.
But it's not. No, it's barely formed. It has no business being on stage. But it was enjoyable and terrific. And so your life up to graduating Yale is about opening doors. Your life, honestly, after Yale is about closing doors. And particularly millennials, when they hear that, they get maybe a little bit bummed out. And maybe we all do. Wow, that sounds bummer, the rest of my life closing doors. But it's not actually true.
Thanks for that inspiring message.
No, but it's not actually true. So think about if you're on some music service, you're on Spotify. At first, you kind of go around, you listen to everything, and yes, Nepalese throat singing is awesome, and the stuff that you find from world music from Cuba, and the Django Reinhardt stuff from the 1930s is amazing. But over time, you realize, that's not really what I want to listen to, and what I really want to listen to is this. And you close the doors on the music that you don't like. And if I sit there and say, well, isn't that sad that you stopped listening to music that you don't like? You'd say, no, I'm not. I'm spending my time listening to music I do like. And your career after you graduate Yale is learning about things that exist. Hey, do I want to do sales? No, it turns out I really don't. What I want to do is marketing. Or hey, do you want to do marketing? No, I don't like doing that kind of stuff. I want to do database programming. Or do you like database programming? No, I prefer finance and accounting.
Right.
Closing the doors is really what your career is about for the next 40 to 50 years. And the sooner you realize that just because somebody else went through that door doesn't mean that you got to go through that door. Just because your mother, father, siblings, friends, classmates, peers, celebrity that you look up to says that you ought to go through that door doesn't mean you got to go through that door. You got to figure out what you actually like. What is it on Spotify that you actually like, and listen to that. What is it in your career that you actually enjoy doing, you get some thrill or passion out of, and then do the most courageous thing possible, which is go do that.
Actually do that.
Whatever the obstacles are, whatever the hurdles are, go do that.
I love that message. I think that's so true. It's one of the things we find on HireArt is exactly the same thing. Either people are applying for jobs that they actually don't want, or they're unable to articulate what they do want. So one of the other pieces is giving yourself time to figure out what it is you want. I mean, the food story is great, but not all of us have something that you're so passionate about off the bat. So I think figuring out what that is.
But that's bravery.
Is key.
That's what bravery isn't. Knocking down everything else out there and kind of being snarky and supercilious about stuff. Bravery is putting yourself out there and being authentic and trying things and learning about whether or not I like it, regardless of whether somebody's laughing at you or whatever, something stupid. That's what bravery is. Right? And so that'd be my advice for folks.
So I love that message, and I want to end on that for this particular part of the talk. We have 2 or 3 minutes left for questions if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask.
What's the top 3 pieces of advice you would give to a student as far as their online presence, their LinkedIn, to get a job? Like what 3 things should
Well, the top 3 bits of advice. So everybody in the room probably has a LinkedIn profile, so I'm not really groundbreaking there with that. It would be get your message, figure out what your message is. What is somebody going to hire? So a hiring manager who has a job, what are they going to hire you for? It is 3 things that they're going to hire you for. They're going to hire you to increase sales or to do marketing, whatever. Figure out what that message is, and then repeat that message in every bit of your online profile, whatever it is. So if you're a logistics person in Minneapolis, you're probably going to be working at Target or Dayton or something like that. Your focus is, I love logistics. Here's the part of logistics I'm good at. Here are the innovative new things that I'm doing in logistics. Right? And repeat that over and over and over again. Don't say that you can also do, I'm also interested in marketing. I'm also interested in, international travel. Sometimes I think about, franchising in the Southwestern United States. Because people really only spend 6 to 8 seconds looking at your online profiles before they figure out whether you go into the next pile or not. Make it easy for them by telling them, here's what I want to do.
Any other one final question? All right, well, with that, thank you so much, Marc, for your time.
Thanks so much, Elli. Thanks.